Hello. Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to the 41st CALLERLAB convention here in Reno or Sparks, Nevada. Today is April 14th, and this is Monday, and the name of this session is Sophisticated Site Resolution. My name is Ken Ritucci. I come from West Springfield, Massachusetts. Been calling about 37 years and teaching callers site resolution for the past 30 years, as many in your room already know that. To my right is the distinguished Mr. Ed Foote from Wexford, Pennsylvania. Been calling 350 years. Calling a long time. We welcome you today. It's nice to see you. We got such a great group. I'm going to start with some opening comments and turn it over to Ed. Obviously, the name of the session is called Sophisticated Site Resolution Methods. Last year at the convention, we had a couple of sessions. One was near site, far site. Ed and I did a session on beginner site resolution, and there was another panel that did advanced site resolution techniques. This is sort of going on the premise that everyone in the room already does site resolution and has used some form of a method, whether it's isolated site or two-face line or facing line or ocean wave resolution. That is the premise we're going on. But of course, we will be opening this up for questions and comments. And if there's anything you don't understand as we go along, please ask over the microphone, and we'll certainly review things. Obviously, we've made space. We're going to have a square. And without me saying too much further right now, I know Ed's got some things he wants to get into, and we want to sort of lay the groundwork for what we're going to really be working on today. Mr. Ed Foote.
They should be at my dances. We're going to be looking at sophisticated site. The title is Sophisticated Site Resolution, and we're definitely going to be doing that. But we're also going to be looking at just sophisticated site, because we know that site calling, 95% of site calling is not resolution. It's just what we do before the resolution. So we're going to be looking at that also. I'd like to, there's a chair up here. If you need one chair up here. In my comments, I like to discuss things that may be obvious, but nobody's thought about. And so it's not something necessarily profound, but it's things to consider. So the first thing with site, we all know, most of us in our methods, two-face line or facing line, we pick a primary and a secondary couple. And what I see when I work with callers is they pick out the primary and secondary, and they start calling it. Oh, I forgot who they are. In picking out your primary and secondary couple, that job is the most important thing in your life for the next 7 minutes. So when you're up there, when you're standing up and saying, okay, there's the primary and secondary there, and pick one over here. No, you don't do it like that. You say, that's the primary and that's the secondary, and I'm going to burn them into my mind because this is vital, because if I don't remember them, I'm going to go down the drain. And you burn it in, and you have that intensity, and that's the intensity with which you remember your primary and secondary couple. The second thing on sophisticated site is, I've always had a rule of thumb: you should be able to resolve the square at any given instant in 12 seconds or less. Maybe 15 at the most. Now, and at our schools, we say, if somebody says, yeah, I can do that, we stand behind them, they start to call, snap the fingers in the ear. If they can do it in 12 to 15 seconds 5 times in a row, we know they got it. Well, makes no difference how many calls. There's this misconception out there that, well, you should be able to resolve the square in 3 calls or less, or 4 or whatever, and that just is not true. That's some figment from ages ago that just does not apply today. Why do we say you should be able to resolve in 12 to 15 seconds? Why is that? Why do I feel that's important? First of all, if the whole floor has gone down the drain, then you want to get the remaining squares to a left allemande as fast as possible so you can get everybody going again. And the second thing is, with the beautiful creative choreography that you have learned over the years, you call along and you're building the dancers up for success, and you have them up here. Now you want to hit them with a left allemande or whatever get out it is. But if you say, okay, now it's time, and now I got to work around and call, and it takes 30, 40 seconds. They've come down off of the mountain, and now the left allemande is just another left allemande. So for excitement and for giving the dancers the carrot of the reward when you've given them the success of the creative choreography, you want to give them that carrot right away. You don't want to wait. So those are the two reasons why I like the 12 to 15 second rule. Now, you won't make the 12 to 15 second rule if you go strictly according to the formula that's on the sight calling methods that we all know: facing line sight, two-face line sight, isolated, crams, whatever. It's the shortcuts and the variations that enable you to get this 12 to 15 second time limit. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to show you some of these things that you can do today. Okay, Kim?
Yeah, a couple of comments too. I see around the room, I see a lot of very experienced callers. I see callers who have been teaching callers at my caller school. I see callers who are relatively new that I personally know, that I've been to some of my schools, and there's obviously people here I don't really know. I don't know all of the experience, but we have a wide range in here. And the idea is that when we learn the sight call and we learn sight resolution, more or less, resolution, is that we tend to learn from a method or two, and then from there, as we call more, and especially with our own groups, I always tell callers the best place to practice sight calling is usually your own group, because you feel more comfortable with these dancers. You obviously know the dancers. You know who their partners are, who they might be married to, or who they dance with on a regular basis. And unless, of course, they separate and dance different partners every tip in their clubs that do that, you should have a comfort level with them. You should also know their dance experience. Are they strong dancers? Are they weak dancers? Are they dancers that you can rely on when you start calling? We can't rely on everybody. And many times we make the mistake. We might pick on a couple, especially if we're guest calling. And I've done this in the past where the color coordination is wonderful. And I'll say, okay, I can remember the couple in blue, but the couple in blue has a hard time dancing and they struggle. So that's not a couple that I'm going to want to watch the rest of the night. But getting back to what I was saying, we tend to learn a method or two methods. And being able to sight call and sight resolution out of those methods is where you become more sophisticated, where all of a sudden you just see it on the fly, or you start to realize, I don't have to get them in a two-face line and get my secondary lady in the same line. I don't have to go through all those steps. If I just say wheel and deal, allemande left, they're right there. But for newer callers, we don't see this. It takes time and it takes practice. And I know some callers who have told me this is, I don't really sight call. I'm afraid. I'm nervous. I don't know if my dancers are going to be able to do it. I can't remember. We're never going to get really good at sight resolution if we don't practice it. So I'm a big believer in sight resolution. It's only one of the methods in sight calling that we have. I think we need a great foundation of modules. We've spoken about that in the past. You should always have a foundation of modules and when you're learning to call. But as you start to use different methods, and then they're not even really methods at this point. It's snap judgment. It's micro judgment from the floor that all of a sudden you can say, I can pass the ocean to a right and left grand. But maybe 2 years ago, you couldn't see that. You couldn't see if I passed the ocean to a right and left grand. Or you weren't experienced enough to get the dancers into a particular formation or arrangement to do some of these get outs. And we are going to have a square get up here. We're going to show you some things, and hopefully I'm going to have a time where I can show you what I just gave it a name. Maybe someone's given it a name beforehand. I'm not taking any credit for it. I call it snapshot resolution, where you're calling along, and then in your mind, as we all do, we decide it's time to resolve. You can't keep calling forever, as you know. We have to reward the dancers. We have to bring them back home with a proper and successful resolution. And I'll do what's called a snapshot. I'll just simply say, my mind will click and say it's time to resolve. I'll take a look at 4 dancers in the square that I'm sighting on, and I'll look that within that group of 4, no matter where they are on the floor, whether they're on this side, whether they're in a line, whether they're in a box, is there 2 that I can match up quickly? Because remember, provided that you've called symmetric choreography, and provided that all the dancers have done what you've called, we know, or we should know from our experience or from education, that what happens on one side of the square is going to happen on the other side. So if we have a matched pair on the outside over to my right, who do you think should be matched on the outside? It should be the same, should be the opposite couple. If we have mismatched on the outside and matched in the middle, so it's like a mirror image, so to speak. And these are the things you need to know if you're going to start doing sight calling on the fly or using more sophisticated methods. Because if you can determine that on one side of the square the outside couple is matched, then you don't need to look at the other side of the square. You can try to resolve within that group of 4. So that's what I call snapshot resolution, and it's sort of a lot of fun. It's sort of a challenge in a game, and I'm starting to use it more and more with the experienced callers that come to my school. And I'll just stop them and I'll say, we're not going to use any method. Take a look at 4 dancers. I said, who's there? And then they'll say, well, she has her partner next to him, but the outside people wouldn't. I said, so, okay, so let's try to get those 2 people together within a group of 4 within a relatively short period of time. As you know, you can always tell a new beginner sight caller, they're calling along and they're doing a great job, and then you tell them to resolve, and then all of a sudden the train starts to go slow because now they start looking and, looking here and there. Oh, I got to match that person up and I got to bring that person over there. And you have to remember, as many in this room do know, I know that because I know many of you, that we have to juggle about 10 balls in the air when we call. We have to have our timing is good. Our body flow should be impeccable. We should be able to have great enunciation and diction. We should be clear. We should not be too loud but not too low. We should be able to use the music in a rhythmic flow. Try to use some cadence. Try to put the words to the music that we're using on the pattern music. Keep the dancers moving at all times. Our timing should be impeccable. We shouldn't be too fast with the dancers. We shouldn't be calling too slow. All of that has to be done at the same time that you all of a sudden decide, oh, I have to resolve. And that's not easy. For newer callers, that's really hard. How do you get better at that? You get better at that by calling and calling and calling and calling and practice. And practice. Eventually, you don't need any methods. How many, just by quick show of hands, don't really use a method anymore when they resolve? They just resolve. How many continue to use one of the methods that they've learned? Okay, well, some of you are newer. Okay. How many don't even realize if they use a method, they just resolve? It happens. I get that all the time. A couple people wait for the tape. A couple people raise their hand. You just sort of, I used this term for Ed before, you morphed into just resolving, okay? And that's what happens. After a while, the beginning lessons that we learn, the beginning techniques sort of go away, or they sort of morph or transform into more sophisticated methods. And that's the beauty of it, because at some point, I like to see all callers get off a particular method. However, the good point about having a method is that it's something to fall back on. So if you want to decide to start experimenting out there and getting very confident in your calling, but all of a sudden you start to get nervous or something, you could say, at least I have a method I can fall back on. I can do the two-face line. I know the steps. I've learned the steps. I can do the facing line method. And I just came back from Denmark and did a clinic, and there was a caller there with 8 years experience, and he's calling about 3 groups a week. I just assumed, I shouldn't do that he was very proficient in his resolution. And he admitted to me, he says, I do more module. He said, and he had some great modules, but when I heard him calling, I can tell he was doing more modules because the get-outs were fantastic. I mean, they were really good get-outs, and I'm starting to think, I don't know if he's citing all these get-outs or not. And he admitted he wasn't. So I simply showed him a two-face line resolution method, which he said he had never really learned. And by the end of the week, he says, I'm going to go home and use this. I've got 3 clubs a week. I can practice it. So I felt good knowing that I left them with something. But every caller's different. But at least you have in the back of your mind that you can fall back on a method. Ed?
So how do you become a sophisticated psych caller or work toward that goal? We said, number 1, high degree of mental intensity when you establish the primary and secondary couples. Second, work toward the ability to resolve in 12 seconds or less. Number 3, you must be able to remember primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. Now, most people say, I'm lucky to remember 1 square. Well, if you were present last year, I have a handout entitled, How to Remember Primary and Secondary Couples in 3 Squares. And we don't have that here this year, but it's available from the home office if you want to contact them for that. And what it is, you pick out the easiest people in the room, and those are your primary couples, and they're primary couples that whole night. If you're a guest caller, if you're a home club, they're your primary couples for life. They're always Now, if you have the same primary couples for 3 weeks in a row, you're never going to forget them. So people just groaned when I said, well, you got to remember primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. Well, half the work's done. You have your permanent primary couples. Now you're going to remember 3 couples. And 3 couples is not that difficult. It's not 6. So that's number 3. The third thing is you must be able to remember primary and secondary couples in 3 squares. If you can't, if you only remember 2 or 1 square, then you're going to retrench. You're going to call nothing because you're so afraid that 1 square is going to break down. Or if you remember 2 squares and 1 square breaks down real quick, you're going to go back to calling nothing. So you must remember primary and secondary in 3 squares. Number 4, to be a sophisticated psych caller, you want to have a lot of left alamans. A lot of left alamans. And I'm talking mainstream and plus here because they like left alamans. In advance and challenge, they're more into right and left grain get-outs or at-home get-outs. But mainstream and plus, if you do an at-home get-out for mainstream or plus, they say, hey, gee, you cheated me out of a left alaman. What's going on here? So you have to give them a reward a lot. My rule of thumb is I want to give them a left alaman every 45 seconds, which means as I'm calling along and I get to about the 30-second mark, I'm starting to look for a get-out. Now, I may still be calling along. In fact, once I get to 20 or 25 seconds, I'm looking for a get-out because I don't have to go 45. If they've just done something and I see, hey, I can do a get-out here in 3 seconds, I want to take it. That's a gift that was just given to me. So you want to have a lot of left alaman get-outs. Be able to get out quickly. We said quickly because you built the dancers up for success, but also you want to give them a lot of carrots. So in a 6 or 7 minute patter tip, if you have a left alaman, if you have a get-out every 45 seconds, you get a lot of rewards in there for the people that have been successful. To be a sophisticated psych caller, we're going to show you some things that are just kind of obvious that as you're going along, snapshot, as Ken said. I don't want to clutter my mind with a lot of wonderful memorized get-outs. My mind has better things to do. So, so what I do is I write them down. And this is how you become a sophisticated psych caller. I have sheets a sheet laying on the table beside me. It says 0 lines. Big magic marker, dark print, 0 lines up top. And I have 9 or 10 get-outs on there. And I'm calling along, and I see, hey, I'm coming up to a 0 line. If I'm in an 8-chain through, if I call a slide through, and that's going to give me 0 lines, as I call the slide through, I glance down, pick one of my get-outs, and call it. My rule for get-outs, no longer than 5 calls. And I want the calls vertical. I don't want them horizontal. If the calls are horizontal this way, you can lose your spot. But if they're vertical coming down, it's easier to see them. So it's a little trick to remember. I'll have another sheet labeled 0 lines out, and I have the word out in big, huge, bold letters. 0 lines out of sequence. And my third sheet is 0 box. So now as I'm cruising along and I want a sophisticated get out, I just glance down and pick one. Now I'm not standing with my head down reading. There are only 5 calls or less. So when I glance at the thing, I pretty much have the whole thing. Or maybe I just have to glance down once. And of course the rule for any prepared material, you want it elevated so you never have to lower your head. You always want to have your head out, looking directly out to the floor, and all you flip is one eyelid down so nobody sees that you're looking down at your material. So you have these get-out sheets laid down. You just pick one. Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like, before we get a square up, Joe, we're going to need you right now to help us out. Comments, questions, things that are working good for you on the actual resolution of your calling, or things that aren't working good, or what problems are you getting into even though you feel, quote, comfortable site resolution? Anything? Anyone? State your name and where you're from, please.
My name is Doug Saunders. I'm from Santa Rosa, California. I just had to laugh at what Ed said because it's funny how great minds work differently based on how much time you actually call. I've been out for years coming back, and he said he writes down his get-outs that 5 calls, and that he memorizes the primaries in 3 squares. Bless you, my son. I could not memorize that many people. I write down the squares and memorize the get-outs. Do just exactly the opposite.
There's no problem in, well, there's 2 things about writing them down. First of all, if you write them down, it says to your mind, you don't have to do much work here. Because you can always look down and read and see who it is, but that takes time to do that. So I want my mind like a finely tuned piano, very, very sharpened and staccato.
I memorize the one that I can count on, that I think I can. Those are residuals in case I get in trouble. But I do watch the whole floor.
Right,
but then I memorize the get-outs but your idea of writing down, when I call for advanced clubs, because I fill in very little. I don't call clubs anymore. I just fill in for our local callers. Because I don't call advanced enough, I write the whole modules in lines. And I'm proficient enough at memorizing those pretty much that I rarely look at that, but I have it handy because I can't extemporaneously keep going and make it make any sense. That's why I memorize one.
Some callers say it helps them to remember the primary and secondary by writing them down. They write them down, then they never look at it again. That's fine. I acknowledge that that's acceptable. On the other hand, if I'm, okay, everybody square up, Now, sophisticated dancers will see me leaning over and writing, and they'll say, gee, here we got this caller here, and he can't even remember who the people are. He's got to write them down. I don't want that image in their minds. If it's the only way I can remember, though, then I do it, because you gotta have the primary and secondary. But that's why I want to memorize the people, because I don't want that image in their minds of me writing them down, and it keeps my mind more finely tuned.
Any other comments, questions? I'm assuming then everybody has 100% resolution every time, right?
Ray Wiles from South Rockwood. Just a question, not necessarily for me, but for the other people. Do you always pick the same primary and secondary couple as in couple number 1 and 2 in the squares, or how do you?
No. Danger. The rule for the primary couple is it's the most recognizable couple for you in that square. So in this square, it's couple number 2. In that square, it's couple number 3. In that square, it's couple number 1. The basic underlying rule, no mental effort to remember the primary couple. If you have to have mental effort to remember the primary couple, there's too much mental activity going on. It's going to mess you up. You won't be able to remember your 3 squares. A lot of people say, well, at caller school, they always choose couple number 1 as primary. Yeah, that's what happens. And some people think, well, that's the rule. Well, it isn't the rule.
And the reason why we pick 1 is because of the pennies. The colored pennies we put on 1, 2, 3, 4. So I know with at my school, some of my pennies, 1 is white and 4 is black. To me, those contrast, so it's easy to see out color wise. And 2 might be red and 3 might be green or purple or something, and it might be it might confuse a newer caller. But no, I don't do the same thing either. They don't have to be 1 and 4. I look for who either I know they're great dancers and they're strong dancers and I can rely on them, or I know I've been watching them and I feel comfortable with them, or I just love their color coordination. And it's not just colors. I call for a lot of different groups all over the country, and you call for some of the gay clubs, and they're excellent dancers. You can have 8 men in a square, 8 women in a square. So you start looking for other things. You start looking for clothing sometimes. I start looking for height. I start looking for matching things, colors, whatever, glasses, whatever. So you have to really be pretty clear before you start, your first sequence, that you feel comfortable somehow. I take a little bit different approach than Ed on the writing it down. It doesn't bother me if people write it down. I don't mind that. What I find is many, many, many times callers will say to me, I wrote it down, but I forgot to look. Seriously, I'm serious. It's not even funny at this point anymore, because I'll, whether they're nervous or whatever, but they forget to look. And a key mistake I see sometimes from site callers, and I'm not saying beginner site callers. I know people who call in 15, 20 years, and they still do something like this. They may have 6 squares out in front of them, but they're literally leaning over, staring at the square here in the corner, because that's that caller's primary square. But I mean, they're bent over staring at it. And I pointed out to a caller not too long ago, I said, you made it really obvious who you were citing on. And they said, oh, I did. I said, yeah. So you don't want to do that. You want to stand up. You want to be calling to the back of the hall. You want to be looking around. We may not realize it, but dancers are looking at us more than we think. Now we're keeping them busy, and they're moving, and they're dancing, and they're thinking, but they'll still look up and see. And to see this means, has anyone ever had a dancer come up to you and say, well, we didn't make it through in our square because he or she was sighting on his primary square. He had them all set up right in the front, and he was staring right at them, and the rest of the squares couldn't do what he was calling, because he or she was confident that, well, I have my 1 square, they're going to do everything I want, and I'm going to be successful because everyone's going to get through in that square. But were they really successful? No. We're not successful when we try to just stockpile 1 square to get through what we want. It should not be our agenda. The dancers need to win. And it's our job to make sure that everybody wins as much as possible. So if you find yourself in the habit of staring at 1 square, don't do that. Ed, you want to get some up?
Just one quick follow-up. I am so afraid of having all my squares with primary and secondary couples. I picked 3. I'm so afraid of having all of them break down that as I'm calling, I'm going for squares 4 and 5 on the fly. I'm calling my material and I'm trying to pick up 4 and 5 squares. Well, that's true. His comment was lucky to have 4 or 5 squares. But I'm a big fan of insurance. That's my insurance, that all the squares I've picked are going down the drain. I pick up somebody else on the fly. Beware of the trap of picking primary and secondary couples all in the front squares. Ken said, well, you might look off to the side. So you say, all right, I'll pick one here, one there, and one in the middle, one over on the side. No, you pick one 2/3 of the way back on the one side and 1/3 of the way back on the other side. You always want your eyes aimed the same way as the music is aimed. Good sound hits the floor 2/3 of the way back. That's where you want your eyes aimed at. That means everybody in the floor thinks you're looking at them. But if you're concentrating on the front 3 squares, because that's where you've picked your primary and secondary, everybody's going to on the floor and say, oh, he's calling his own private dance for them down there. He doesn't care about me at all. It's a little bit of a downer. Okay, let's get a square up if we can.
Hello. Now keep in mind, this square is just squaring up. We're not matching colors. We're not saying you dance over there, you dance over there. I have heard one comment that some callers sometimes insist certain dancers in their club dance in the 1 or 4 position all night long, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, that doesn't look too.
Yeah, I've heard that. You don't want to
swift.
do that. No.
And it's amazing to me. I mean, here we're all at CALLERLAB. We're all interested in learning, and it amazes me some of the things I hear from dancers about their callers when I'm traveling around the country. And one of the things I hear more than I would ever like to hear is that, oh, our caller says it doesn't make any difference if you get to the corner. As long as you're dancing, you get to an Alaman with anybody, then that's fine. Well, that's not the name of the game. That's really an excuse for that caller saying, I can't sight call good. So I'm going to make that excuse up. All right. So just to show you a couple quick things, one other thing I should mention, as I'm going along, I love Dixie Grand get-outs. And if any of you have heard my presentation on Dixie Grands before, why giving you the formulas and everything. So as I'm going along and at about 25 or 30 seconds and I'm looking where the square is, it's always flashing through my mind, are they pretty close to a Dixie Grand get-out? If so, I'm going to take it. Because Dixie Grand is an underused call because a lot of callers are afraid of it or they don't know the formula. And so therefore, I want to throw these in, show the dancers they can be successful with it. It's exciting, it's forward motion, it's uplifting. So that's another part of my thought process. All right, let's do this. In looking at this square, and we said we want to pick out the most prominent couple as the primary couple. Who's the couple that I would pick out? Right. Number 3 couple has an orange shirt and the woman is in black, so the primary couple. So obviously the secondary couple is to their left, and isn't this good for me because the secondary couple is a little short? So not that they're secondary in life, but for my choosing of the primary and secondary, they're perfect. All right. So let's, I'm going to show you one thing that I do that I haven't heard anybody else do, and I'm not saying you have to do this, but I just find it get success with it. Heads lead to the right, veer left, bend the line. We all know that from here we have 0 lines out of sequence. I'm going to repeat often here for the video and in the CD where our formation is. We have 0 lines out of sequence. So we know from here, there are, just from knowledge, we don't have to have this written down, there are a myriad of get-outs we can call. We can call slide through, pass through, Alaman left. We can call slide through, box and that right and left grand. What I like to do, well, here's another, I'm going to do this twice. Everybody slide through, pass through, you turn back, right and left grand, don't do it. So we know that works. Okay, get back to those footprints where you were in lines out of sequence there. Now, I've heard callers call that exactly the way I called it. Slide through, pass through, you turn back, right and left grand. I never call it that way because to me that's a downer. Instead, I'm going to call slide through, pass through, turn around, right and left grand. I increased the volume of my voice. I didn't say you turn back. I said turn around, and I propelled them into it. And I always do that right at the start of the dance. And that gets the dancers saying, wow, he says, turn around. Maybe we should listen. What else are you going to call? So we better listen to him. And that's what I want the dancers to do. I want the dancers to be listening to me, and I got to train them really fast. So I always call that get out at the start of the dance, and I'll call that during the course of the dance too. Oh, I don't know if somebody had a question. Okay, just everybody face in, make your line of 4. Okay. We know that we now have 0 lines. We know from 0 lines, if we call square through 4, it means the same thing as turning our back on our partner, and then we can do a left allemande, right? Wrong. 2 left hands in a row. Everybody nodded yes. Give yourself a demerit. How do we use this knowledge? That square through 4 is going to have us turn our back on our partner, and we're going to be facing our corner. Everybody square through 4, go. Turn around, right and left grand. And they're right there, don't do it. So we take that knowledge. Now, everybody do a right and left through. Now we have 0 lines out of sequence. We take that same knowledge from 0 lines out. We'll achieve the same thing by a square through 2. Square through 2. Do a U-turn back, and we can do the right and left grand. Everybody face in. Okay, Ken.
Okay, let me show you. We're going to mix them up a little bit. Ned, give us a call.
Slide through.
Okay, slide through. Okay, Doug, give us a call.
Touch a quarter.
Touch a quarter. Great. Tom.
Split circulate. Split circulate.
Thank you. Split circulate. Give us a call.
Scoot back.
Scoot back. Lynn, give us a call.
Girls run.
Girls run. Okay. So I want to take a look at it. And I said, remember I mentioned the name snapshot resolution. Okay. Now to me, it's just it was a term I came up with where I want to take a picture of 4 people in the square. You can either take a picture of these 4 here, these 4 here, these 4 here, or these 4 here. So I decide I want to take a picture because now I'm starting my resolution process. Excuse my back. I want to take a picture of these 4 here. Okay, so what do we see in this group of 4 right here? They're across from their partner. So, okay, corner. She's got her corner. However, let's look at what is the formation this is called. Okay, so it's in-facing lines is the formation. The lines, what is the arrangement? Half sashayed. A key mistake many callers make when they start to resolve is that we see formation, but we don't always quickly see arrangement. So they'll say, now if you're calling mainstream here, they might say, oh, in-facing lines, oh, right and left through. But you can't do that from here. We see the formation, so our mind tells us, you got in-facing lines. So all of a sudden the mind says, well, call right and left through. But you can't because they're half sashayed. So what's one of the first rules we should do when we're going to use any type of get out or resolving is we need to normalize the square. How can we normalize this square? Box the net. I like that. Box the net. Okay. So from here, now everyone is, quote, normalized, boy, girl, boy, girl. I'm still looking at my 4. I sort of lucked out this time because everybody's got their partner right there. So I want to start matching them up right away. How can we match up our people right here? You can do a ladies chain, but I don't want to do that. You can do a star through, but I don't want to do that.
Just everybody remember your position, because when he's done, I want to come back to this footprint. Remember that.
Okay, so I want to do something a little bit different with some more body flow and a little bit smoother other than ladies chains and things like that. Let's pass the ocean. Girls trade. Everybody fold. And a right and left grand. You don't have to do the right and left grand. Now, you may say, well, how did you see that? How did you know that? It takes a long time, and I'm talking to a lot of seasoned veteran callers in this room who know what I'm talking about. But did I see that after 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years of calling? No, I'll be honest, I didn't. But when did I start to see things like that? The more I called, the more I had live bodies in front of me, and the more confident I got. Remember, you're not just building up the dancer's confidence when you resolve correctly, you're also building up whose? Your own. So as my confidence gets better, as your confidence gets better, and Joe's gets better, and et cetera, you're going to start to use more of these. It's not even a method. I just decided to take a snapshot of 4 dancers, and I knew that the other 4 were going to do exactly what I said because I was looking at these 4, and I resolved the way I did. Okay, square up. Ed?
Go to your footprint.
Oh, go to your footprint.
I'm going to do basically almost the same thing Ken did. Pass the ocean, girls trade, boys run, promenade. Now, that's no big deal, but how many home or whatever, yeah. But it's not done. So that's just another piece of variety that you can put into your material. Now, Ken, being a better caller than I am, he was able to look at the group of 4 that had the secondary couple, but I'm not as that good. So I would have looked at the other group of 4 that had the primary, because I'm always going for my primary first. Sometimes I'll luck out and go with the secondary, but I'll tend to go with the primary first, and especially as you're learning this stuff, I would encourage you to do that because the primary is really burned into your mind.
Yeah, let's have the heads past the ocean, extend, girls trade, all 8 circulate, swing through, boys circulate, boys run, bend the line, and touch a quarter. Okay, so.
We had 0 lines, everybody with their opposite, and then the call was touch a quarter.
Okay, so everybody I have called what I wanted to call. At some point, like we had mentioned earlier, your mind just tells you, hey, it's time to resolve. You know, you can't keep calling forever. The dancers will get tired. They won't start listening. And some of them might realize that maybe you don't know how to resolve. I don't know. So you got to be careful of that. So now I want to take a look at 4 dancers. And this time I'm going to get somebody in the audience that might look at something different than me. So let me pick on someone here for a second. If you were going to resolve Gene right now, which four dancers would you look at?
I'd probably look at the primary.
You're still looking at your primary man, so that means you're going to look at this group of 4. Okay, so Gene picked it. So the snapshot of what I've taken, or he's taken in his mind, he says, I'm going to look at these 4 dancers. Okay, this is where the train happened to stop. The chips fall where they may. So what do you see in this group of 4 right now that can help us resolve? You got one of everybody. Right, but you got number 1 man and corner. That's pretty cool. I like that. Now, so from here, I'd have, now again, you have to keep the dancers going. The key is you've got to juggle those balls in the air. Just because your mind said it's time to resolve doesn't mean we stop and get bad body flow and start looking around and chaining the ladies and things aren't going to work out. We got to keep everybody together. Let's have all the girls run around the boy. Now I'm just going to dance them for a minute. Box the net. Slide through. I'm still dancing them. Let's pass the ocean. I'm still working with my 4. Ladies trade. Recycle. Now I know I've got to get out of this, but I know I've matched up the 2 that I wanted to match up. So I'm going for the gold right now. Pass through, trade by, box the net, right and left grand.
Consider there, and a lot of women don't really like boxing net, and especially seniors or whatever. Right there, he could have called slide through and roll, and it would have been
I could have,
right
but I was keeping it at mainstream. I didn't.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Can you go back to remember the position he had you in just before he started this get out? You had columns, and and she was up here, and right.
Yeah.
Now, he had the girls run around a boy. That's sort of a gamble, some of the groups I call for. Girls run around a boy, I'm rolling the dice. I don't want to roll the dice on a get-out. If they've been successful here, I don't want to gamble here. So I would have had the boys run and trade by. But I like circulate, boys run. But I like what Ken did. Girls run, go. Girls run, pass through, trade by, and a right and left grand.
Or, yeah.
Now, how did I see? Go back where you were. Go back there
So
again.
you tightened it up even more.
How did my mind work there? Girls run. When I called pass through, I didn't know what was going to happen. My thought process was, I'm going to call pass through, but as I'm saying the word pass, I'm looking at everybody. And I'm looking at my primary man and his partner. Where are they? So I call the pass through. Go ahead, pass through. And I say, if I do a trade by, it's going to be right and left grand. But I haven't even looked at the secondary yet. So if my primary man doesn't have a secondary, and I call the trade by, and I say, I'm ready to call right and left grand. Whoop, I can't. I bail out. Nobody knows the difference. Nobody knows. That's the beauty of this. You try it, and if it doesn't work, you can just keep going. But that's why you want your quick get-outs, because you don't have time to keep playing around and playing around. If one thing doesn't work, you go out to something else. Do a trade by, star through, California twirl, pass the ocean. Boys circulate, girls trade. So since we're keeping it on mainstream, okay. Swing through. All 8 circulate. Boys run around a girl. Couples circulate, girls trade. This is something I just learned from experience. So steal this, because it's sort of neat. If you call, and I learned this from calling advance, but of course I don't use those terms here. I know that when I have I know that when I have one couple or 2 couples with partner and 2 with nut, I can call a turn and deal pass through right and left grand if they're set up right. But I can't say those words here. But I do have one couple, primary with partner, secondary nut with partner. So I'm going to call my turn and deal directionally. Half tag, go. Half tag, face right, pass through, right and left grand.
There you go.
So anytime, and you can call that directionally, but you got to call it quick. And now what if, but I don't always remember, as I'm going along on the fly, I don't remember. Did I say the primary couple, they have to be looking in or looking out? I don't remember. So maybe I have them facing out and I start my get out. Oops, I missed it. All right, I just keep going. And nobody knows that I missed it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the beauty of trying any type of, well, we coined the phrase sophisticated, anything out of the ordinary, anything not using a set routine, 2-face lines, matching people up. I really do like what I call the snapshot version because, well, one caller said, well, now you have to know all 8 dancers in your square. And I said, no, not necessarily. When I decided to choose those 4, I already knew 2 of them anyway. And they happened to be my primary man in his corner. So if we're going to memorize primary and secondary, how many people are we going to learn anyway? 4. So out of the 4 on this side of the square, there happened to be 2 of my 4 that I could play with. And Ed, I showed you one method of getting out, bringing them across the street, and then Ed did the half sachet version and tightened it up even more. That's the beauty of resolving on the fly or looking at certain arrangements and formations at any time, because there could be a million different ways to get out of it. I saw one thing, Ed saw something a little bit different. Some of you in the audience might have seen another type of get out, and that's the beauty of it. But where does it all come from? Experience. Experience. If a show of hand again, how many are strictly still using a method that you learned at a school or a clinic? Okay, I would continue to use that method, but at some point, if you have regular groups to call for, I would try to start to look at other things that you can do. Maybe take a snapshot of 4 dancers and say, aha, a star through is going to match 2 of them up right away. Now that I've got 2 matched up on one side, I should have 2 matched up on the other side. Remember, at that point, you only really need to look at the 4 dancers, whether they're here or there, because the other 4 are going to be doing exactly what you say. Yes?
When I do I'm Jim Hawkins. I'm from Pagosa Springs, Colorado. Okay. And I try sight calling, but I don't do the snapshot like you do. I'll take the head couple and her corner in one square. Then I'll go to another square. If you're with your wife, and I know you, and I look at your corner, okay? 2 squares, that's it where we're at. Okay. So, and I get going. And when I get those all lined up again, I can go for a left element or any other move I want to thereafter. Okay. But you're saying to pick 4 instead of, I picked 3. Okay. I picked the head couple in the corner.
Whatever works for you is wonderful. If you're the only one in the world using a method and you can get to your corner in 12 seconds, that's fine with me. Okay. Now, one other thing that Ken mentioned, let's say we saw before that I could make a mistake. I could be going for this great get out and I missed it. I didn't get it. So I got to bail out. So then I go for another one and I bail out. If I miss it twice in a row, I retrench to the basic formula. I retrench to 2-face line sight or facing line sight, and that's why you should be able to say to yourself the steps in each of those methods. So when the whole thing goes down the drain, you can go back, okay, I'm going to plod along, 2-face line, primary together, and circulate, that kind of thing. You always want to be able to fall back on your basic method, so when the whole world goes down the drain, you're still okay.
Okay, I'm going to mix them up this time, and then we're going to agree on looking at 4 people. We're going to have a little fun here, and I'm going to go out in the audience, and I'm going to ask 1 or 2 callers to see how they feel they can resolve on it. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Sides, touch a quarter. Do a walk and dodge. All touch a quarter. Walk and dodge. Boys fold. Star through. Boys circulate. Bend the line, touch a quarter. Okay, so I've called as much as I want to call. Who wants to give it a shot? Let's have some fun here. There's no right or wrong answer here. Who wants to try it? Not all at once, please. Who's that? Oh, you got to give us your name and all that. And you got to let me know which 4 you're going to look at first so we can follow along.
I'll use the same ones. Thomas Hellner from Maryland.
Remember this footprint so I can bring you back, okay, later on.
Tom, which 4 do you want to look at?
I want. Oh, I see. You want me on one side. Okay, I'll look at the ones closest to me.
Okay, so we all know Tom is going to start his resolution by looking at these 4 dancers. Go ahead.
All the ladies do a U-turn back. Okay, pass through, trade by. Pass through, element left. I got the wrong lady. Oh, no, I didn't.
Go back to the footprints. Go back to the footprints. That's okay.
Sorry, I didn't see mine.
That's all right. Okay. Who else wants to give it a shot?
Casey Parker, Manteca, California. Circulate 1 spot. Boys run right. Box and out. Right and left grand.
That was good.
Very good. Excellent. Casey, excellent. Well, he knows what he's doing.
Back to the footprint.
Okay. Back to the no pun intended, footprint. Another one right here. Jane.
Jane Cluey from Tustin, California. Coordinate, which might be plus actually, but yes, it is plus, of course. Couple circulate, Ferris wheel, center swing through. The center boys run and bend the line.
They're home. They're
Excellent.
Home. Back to the footprint.
Who else wants to try it? Back to the footprint. Okay, just give us your name, where you're from.
Jay King from Van Buren, Arkansas. Let's have the girls run. Right and left grand, go ahead. On the fourth hand, do paso.
That's nice. That's nice.
Courtesy turn and a promenade.
We'll hire you at our club anytime.
Okay, Jay.
Back to the footprint.
Back to the footprints. Who else wants to give it a shot?
Let me show a couple things that came to mind as we were doing this. And
Okay.
because we do have a lot of plus listeners and people in the audience, I'm going to take Jane's idea. She called. Did you know when you called to coordinate what you would have at the end? How the arrangements would be? Jane?
I knew I would have the primary couple matched up
Okay.
as the in-facing couple in a right-hand two-face line with everybody unsashayed.
Okay. As in sophisticated sight, take the time as they're doing the call to look around and see what's going on. That's what I was doing when she did the coordinate. I didn't know what was going to happen. Coordinate, go. But as I'm looking and I see what's going to happen, I can have boys fold and a right and left grand. Now go back to the footprint. Now I mentioned I'm always looking for a Dixie Grand get out. And Dixie Grand get outs are always very close when you have two couples with partner and two couples without. That's the setup for a lot of Dixie Grands. So in taking a snapshot of this square, I see that the secondary couple is together. They're in a column, but they're still together. And I'm thinking, I haven't called Dixie Grand for a while, so how can I call Dixie Grand get out here real fast? Well, I know from the formula of Dixie Grand says that from a starting double pass-through position, I want the primary couple in the center, secondary girl behind, or flip of that, secondary couple in the middle, primary man behind, nut with partner. Girls turn back, right and left through. Center's a full courtesy turn, face in the middle centers. Center's square through, and on the third hand start a Dixie Grand, right, left, right. And of course I did the center square, I could have said center's right and left through. That's not quite as good choreography as saying center square through and on the third hand. Okay.
Yeah. Go back to the
footprint.
Okay. Anyone else want to give it a shot? Okay.
Mike Turner, Wichita, Kansas. Just the boys make a U-turn back. Just the centers start a square through. On your third hand, everybody do a right and left grand.
Nice. Okay. Footprint. Anybody else want to give it a shot?
I've never heard my name used so much in one.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to use that. Okay. Before we do any more here, are you starting to see what I mean when I say the word snapshot? Look at all the variations of the get-outs. There were some that I didn't even see, okay? Or Ed didn't see, or others didn't see. But when you take a snapshot, and this is the beauty of it, is you take a snapshot of the four dancers, and yet we can come up with, so far we've had 6 or 7 really nice get-outs. 6 or 7 really nice different get-outs. So when people are saying, you ever have a dancer come up to you and talk, or they may say, they realize you're starting to use the same get-outs. They can almost anticipate what you're doing because you're getting them into that formation and you're about to do the wheel and deal or something or other. You don't want to be that type of a caller. So this is not easy. It's work, okay? If you have to sit down with your checkers and write them out, like Ed said, he's got sheets, 0 lines, get outs. It's okay to have it in front because as you extemporaneous call, sight calling, you can move your dancers into a formation or arrangement where you can then use some of your get outs. Okay? So that's the beauty of the snapshot method here is I just take a look at 4 and then I force myself to play with the 4 that I've come up with. And look at the ones we've had already so far. It's been amazing. Let's see. All the girls run. Okay. Swing through. Boys run. Couples circulate. I'm just playing now. Bend the line. Because I play, but what I mean is I like to keep dancers moving. I like body flow. I like utilizing the music we have. Okay, past the ocean, everybody fold, and a right and left gram. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, then don't do that. Stay there. Hold on. I'll fix my boo-boo. Slide through. Did you already fix it?
He fixed
California
it over here.
twirl. Thank you. Ferris wheel. Dixie Grand. Right, left, right, LMN left. Whatever they did, don't do it. Okay, Ed.
Okay, yeah. For our last little remaining part here, we want to discuss sophisticated sight that doesn't involve resolution. We want to look at the value of center's trade. The value of center's trade. This has never been written down, but a number of experienced callers know about this. And so if you write it down, if you start doing this, you will be the first in your block to have done this. And the dancers will leave your dance saying, gee, it was smoother tonight than some other callers. I don't know why. They can't analyze the choreography, but it just felt smoother. So let's look at this whole idea. Let's have the head star through and spread. So I'm not worrying about corners now. We're looking, this is before we resolve. Pass through, wheel and deal. Girls pass through. So we have an 8 chain through formation, boys on the outside, girls in the middle. The whole world from here to normalize we'll call a star through, right? Gives you, everybody has a normal couple. And then what would the next call be after the star through? We have, that'll give us 2 face lines, left-handed 2 face lines with the boys in the middle after the star through. What would the next call be? Might be a couple circulate. You might be a bend the line. All right, so let's look now. We have an 8 chain through, girls in the middle, boys on the outside. If I call star through, any call I call next is bad for 2 people. It's fine for 6 people. It's bad for 2 people. Who are the 2 people it's bad for? The outside right side boy on each side. Because no matter what I call next, it's going to be a reversal of body direction for him. All the other 6 are fine. So how do I solve this? How do I still call my star through, but not have it be awkward for him? What I'm going to do is I'm going to call the star through, and I'm going to inject a center's trade before I give the next call, and I'm going to say the center's trade so quickly that the boys don't have time to complete the star through before they do the center's trade, so they're going to blend in to the center's trade. What this does, everybody, just do a star through without the center. Just do a star through. So notice now, star through had this outside right side boy turning to his right. If I call couple circulate, he has to come back to his left. If I call Ferris wheel, he has to come back to his left. If I call bend the line, everybody groan, everybody recognize that's a disaster. Okay, unstar through here.
That's a new call?
Yeah. All right, so.
Not yet.
Star through, boys trade, and the couples circulate, and now it flows smooth. All right, why yeah, control your body. Bend the line. Pass through. Wheel and deal and spread. So now we're going to look at why this is true. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Girls pass through. We have the same thing. Same sex 8 chain through formation. Girls in the middle, boys on the outside. This time it's the other boy happens to be on the right side. When we do a star through, that raises our center of gravity. But when we do the center's trade, it lowers the center of gravity. Any body in motion is more stable if the center of gravity is low. That's why football players don't run standing straight up. They bend crouched down. Same thing here. When we lower our center of gravity, it makes everything more stable. Star through, boys trade, couples circulate. Ferris wheel. Make it a spread outside, squeeze in. Pass through, bend the line. I'm setting them up so you can see this easy. Pass through, wheel and deal, zoom. There goes that theory that callers make the best dancers. Boys pass through. We have a same-sex 8 chain through. The boys are in the middle and the girls on the outside. Same idea. If I call a star through, who are the two danger girls I got to look out for? It's the left side outside girl that's going to be awkward for unless I put the center's trade in. I didn't mention this before. I should be sure. The center's trade, this whole thing, only applies when the centers are facing opposite directions. If the centers are facing the same direction, this whole thing doesn't apply at all. Star through, girls trade. Couples today, couples circulate. Bend the line. All right. Let's
Well, one thing.
Yeah.
Notice the timing of when he said girls trade. Okay, it might not have been. It seems like a minor thing, but he said star through, girls trade, almost in one breath. Something like that is really, really important.
That's vital. It's what I call a clump call. A clump call or two calls said so quickly they sound like one call. Okay, let's pass the ocean. There's another place where this same rule applies. And callers will call this all the time. From parallel, we have normal parallel waves, girls in the middle, boys on the end. The call is boys run. Go, boys run. What's the next call? The whole world calls couples circulate. But it's that same outside right side boy that it's a reversal of body flow. So it's got to be a center's trade before we do whatever it is, bend the line. So the rule is, I like rules because I can read them and remember them. From same-sex 8 chain through, anytime you call star through, the next call must be center's trade. And from parallel waves, anytime you call ends run, the next call must be center's trade. Now, this whole philosophy of the center's trade was first espoused by caller Jack Lazary a long time ago. A lot of well-known callers use this. If you go to some national traveling callers, you'll see them inserting the center's trade. But unfortunately, it hasn't been written down. Now, here's one last place where this knowledge is vital. What's the definition of pass the ocean? It's pass through, face your partner, step to a wave. Does anybody dance it this way? No. The girls are going to do a left-hand hinge when they do a pass the ocean. Everybody pass the ocean, watch the girls. Unless they're going to be okay. Yeah, recycle. Star through. I threw that in for anybody from New England. Okay.
Hey.
That's for Ken, yeah. So we take advantage of what we know the dancers are going to do. And so after we call pass the ocean, in fact, let's look at this. Do the pass the ocean again. Watch the lady in black. Her body motion was to the left. So if you now call a swing through, what happens? She has to come back to the right. Is that bad? Is it awful? No, the whole world calls pass the ocean swing through. But it would be slightly smoother for her if we interrupted before the swing through with the center's trade. Then we can do the swing through real smooth. But it has to have perfect timing. We have to do the center's trade before she completes the pass the ocean, and we have to call swing through before the girls have completed the trade. Do a recycle. So we're going to do the whole thing. Start through. Pass the ocean. Girls trade. Swing through. And it just dances like a charm. Boys run around a girl, bend the line. Am I saying you should no longer call pass the ocean swing through? No. It's fine to keep doing that because the whole world does it. But what I am saying is consider 25 to 33% of the time after you call pass the ocean, insert a center's trade. And it'll smooth out your dance. And the dancers will leave saying, gee, it just felt a little smoother to this caller tonight.
Ed, one thing.
Go ahead.
Okay, while we got the dancers, very quickly, pass the ocean. I see this many times, and this presentation is not on bad body flow, but I'm going to show you one, only because, not because I want to show you bad body flow, but when we talk about resolution, newer callers tend to be more newer callers only because they don't have the experience, but I've seen middle of the road and experienced callers do this. When they want to get them into lines, they do something like this. Boys run, and let's bend the line. Yes, now we all know that that's a killer. My point was not to show that as much as the fact that in their mind said, I want to get them into a line. And I can't tell you if I had $1 for every time I've seen somebody, when you say, let's resolve from lines, and they're in a parallel wave, let's pass the ocean again, they will put the boys into the center. They do the ends running into the center. Not only is that a real bad no-no, but anytime, in my opinion, centers running into the ends, unless you're going to do that trade to offset the body flow like Ed showed, or maybe go forward, that's the least of two evils. If you really want to get into facing lines, a lot smoother would be swing through, boys run, bend the line. I don't know what the fascination is with ends running into centers, but it's always a lot smoother for centers running around the ends. Okay, very quickly, do you need the square?
No, question. How do you feel? Jay King, Van Buren, Arkansas. How do you feel about star through and veer to the left?
No, well, okay.
It's a disaster. You are not allowed to call that combination.
Okay, you're going to force me to come up with Ken's rule.
You just never are allowed. You aren't allowed to call it.
Star through, watch the girls, veer left.
It's playing crack the whip with the girls.
Now, I know a lot of callers who call it. I know a lot of callers are going to say, they're used to it. It's sort of like the walk and dodge, wheel and, it's like the walk and dodge and partner trade. Well, I actually heard years ago, the women are used to it because in round dancing they can do lunge and recover. Well, I kid you not. I kid you not. They can do lunge and recover, so what's the difference if they slide all the way to the right, then they got to slide all the way to their left. However, here's another thing that is a no-no. Do a wheel and deal. All right? Now, pass through, trade by. I want to get them into two-face lines. Veer left. Okay, wheel and deal. Now, at my caller school, I tease. It's not really my rule, but it's Ken's rule at my school. If you want to call veer left, what do you call first? Because it's Ken's rule and you've been there. Right and left through. Veer to the left. Okay? I can't tell you if I had $1 for every time I've seen a caller say pass through, veer left, pass through, veer left. Everything is veer left, veer left, veer left. It is not good body flow. If you're using it, my own personal opinion is don't use it. Do a right and left through. Get the body flow going. Ed, do you need the dancers anymore?
Yeah, just one more thing. Bend the line. Everything Ken said, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. How often, one more thing on this, we had the idea of pass the ocean, centers, trade, swing through. How often do you hear callers call pass the ocean and recycle? I don't know why they do it. First of all, to me, it's illogical. If you're going to put somebody in a wave, do something in there before you take them out of it. Why put them in and take them out? It seems kind of odd to me. And also, it's a direct reversal of body flow for every girl if you call pass the ocean recycle. But if you call pass the ocean girls trade, now you've done something in the wave, it smooths it out, and the whole thing is great. Pass the ocean, girls trade, recycle. And some callers say, well, yeah, but the girls trade messed me up because I wanted this guy with this girl. Forget it. Forget it. The smoothness, we never let our personal desires interfere with the smoothness of the dance experience.
Okay, nice hand for the dancers.
Yeah, appreciate the dance.
Nice hand for Ed Foote. We really want to thank you all for coming. We hope you got a little nuggets out of it. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the convention. Goodbye.